You're watching memorable entertainment television. MeTV TriState.
Broke the story on local homestead tax credit fiasco. Expose the Evansville Redevelopment Commission excessive spending habits.
Your community watchdog. CityCountyObserver.com is your online community newspaper dedicated to the progress of Evansville and Vanderburgh County. We're a nonpartisan publication providing insight into political issues and events that shape our community. We are a watchdog for you, the citizen. Check us out online, city-countyobserver.com. That's city-countyobserver.com.
TriState Voices, an open discussion with area leaders on issues affecting communities throughout the Tri-State. Now, here's your host, Mike Woods.
Good morning. Welcome to TriState Voices. TriState Voices is jointly sponsored by the City County Observer, WTSN, and my office, Woods & Woods. Hi, I'm your host, Mike Woods. Every week, TriState Voices interviews a community leader concerning issues that are important to all of us. Today, I'm really happy to have Cheryl Musgrave here. Cheryl was the county assessor here in Vanderburgh County for 10 years, and she became a county commissioner. After 2.5 years as county commissioner, she was appointed by Governor Daniels to the Indiana Local Finance Commission. Cheryl, we're glad to have you here. Probably the first thing I'd have to ask you is, being the assessor is a pretty rough job. You get a lot of grief. You enjoyed your time as a county commissioner, obviously. How did Daniels talk you into giving that job up?
Oh, well, it was a tough sell, let me tell you.
I believe you.
He actually had to ask me twice. The first time that they asked, I just said no. And I thought about it for a couple of weeks, and it was about this time of year, actually, in 2007. And thought about it. I observed all the people camping out at the State House grounds where they were having a property tax protest that has never been equaled, I think, in this state. And then I decided, well, I have to go to Indianapolis anyway. I'll call them and see if I can go talk to the guy who talked to me, and maybe we can just see if there's really anything to this. Well, I get up there and they hustle me directly in front of the governor, who begins to make the pitch to me personally. I actually said at one point, Governor, I think it's getting a little deep in here, because he really wanted me to come. He had problems that he needed somebody with my background and my high ethical standards to come and take care of. But we struck a deal. I said, Governor, you're in favor of local government reform. You've come out with the Kernan-Shepard report and talked a little bit about township assessors in that whole picture. Said, if you're willing to get rid of or eliminate the office of township assessor, I'll come. And he took about 2 beats and he said, okay. And so we proceeded forward on that basis. I went off and did the many tasks, the important tasks that he put in front of me and that arose during my time there. And he wrote into legislation, and let me tell you, it had to be herded carefully and overcome many obstacles. But at the end of the day, we all voted on a referendum to decide whether or not to keep the office of township assessor. Only 13 of the 1,008 townships decided that they wanted to keep that office. So effectively in Indiana, that office and more than 200 full-time officials, most of them were part trustee and part assessor. Yeah, combined. But there were more than 200 who did nothing but assessing, and those offices were gone beginning, I think, in 2008. So I'm actually very proud of that achievement. Indiana had been actively trying to modify the system of township assessing since 1871. So well more than 100 years of efforts by governors, commissions, legislators, finally culminated in that historic change.
It's interesting when a government office gets entrenched like that. It's almost impossible to kill the thing.
It is very, very difficult. And the offices of township, we're so familiar with them, and we think that they're part of the fabric of the entire country, but really they aren't. They only remain now in the Northwest Territory. Most other states have moved to a different style of government. So I'm not here to advocate for the elimination of townships. I'm just here to educate, perhaps. We took a big step forward. I don't see any possibility in the near horizon that that type of government reform, though, will come to Indiana. So proponents of townships don't need to email me.
All right, well, hold those emails. What's going to happen with the assessor's office?
I strongly suspect that sometime in the next few years, maybe 4, maybe 12 years, that the Office of County Assessor will be an appointed position, much like they do in Kentucky already. Kentucky made that change a number of years ago. Indiana took a more incremental approach. When I ran for county assessor in 1994, all you needed to be was over 18 and an own property in the county. Now you have to have what's called a level 3. And the level 3 takes hundreds of hours of classwork and quite a number of tests to achieve. So for example, in Vanderburgh County now, there are probably only 20, 30 people who are qualified to even run for the office of county assessor.
When you say qualified, you mean legally can run?
Legally qualified to run for the office. And this time, county assessor is on the ballot, but no Democrat candidate who was qualified and willing to run stepped forward. So the current occupant has no opponent. And I think that you'll see that repeated, I think it is repeated, all across the state. So the legislature, rather than take it one day from being an elected office and moving it to an appointed office, I believe they've set up this phasing out of the ability to run for it, where they've increased and increased and increased the qualifications of the office. Now we'll be in a situation where nobody's qualified. We have to do something about this. We need to appoint. I think appointing would be a very smart move, particularly if you appointed it at the state level. Try somehow to remove the political dimension so that you don't have each governor coming in and appointing his cadre. You know, try to make it more civil service-like. But now you don't have a professional group of people who perhaps work in one county for part of their career and move to another county and work there for a part of their career. And that's important because the type of property that you have in counties varies tremendously. In Vanderburgh County, we have power plants and commercial and some industrial, and you go just a couple counties over and you're looking at mostly farmland. And so the level of expertise that you need is remarkably different, and you should be able to deploy your resources in order to take the best approach to assessing property. But I know that I'm probably one of very few people who's interested in this sort of in the weeds discussion, so I'll limit it.
Well, it's like I say, if there's only 20 or 30 people in Vanderburgh County who can legally even seek the office, when you get in some of these smaller counties like Pike and Greene, Davies, and all the rest of it, I mean, how many people do they have legally qualified?
Probably only the incumbent or a member of the staff. That's who the majority of those 20 or 30 people are. They're people who actually work in the assessor's office now.
So you feel like if it was appointed by the governor, it would become more of a professional agency?
Right.
Have
Much
less
more.
Problems?
Well, I don't know if there'll be less problems. I mean, that would be the goal, that
Yeah.
you would have more expertise to deal with the problems that you have at hand. But you're always going to have issues with property. I don't think you can ever get 3 professional appraisers to agree on the value of a piece of property that's going on the market now. So there's always going to be plenty of room for discussion. But I think you would have a lot more professionalism if you had the situation that, where you do have an education and background requirements, and you're being appointed, and you're able to move those resources around as needed.
I think you told me one time that you caught more grief as assessor than you did as commissioner, even though the commissioner's got a lot more control over spending.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I would get grief 8 hours a day at the office, at every neighborhood meeting you go to. I never met anybody who felt that their property taxes were at the right level. Even people who had exempt property felt that they shouldn't have to ask for it to be exempt. There shouldn't be an application process, for heaven's sake, because everyone knows what good people they were and what good things they're doing. They should just be exempt. So nobody's satisfied. And after 10 long years as county assessor and bumping my head up on the problems of township assessors and getting, ears full of grief, I thought, well, I'm going to try to take this to another level and become county commissioner. And no one ever complained to me about their property taxes, even though The county commissioners have a budget of millions and can bond out the county and spend millions more. No one ever expressed any disappointment with spending to me.
Isn't that funny?
I felt that was truly remarkable.
The county commissioners, there's 3 of them. That's the executive branch of the county. But when you have 3 people, it's kind of set up like a legislative branch. Would the county be better off if we had one single executive, kind of like you do for the state, the city, and the federal government?
Yes, there's no question in my mind that we would be better off if we had a single commissioner. Fort Wayne has just achieved legislation after at least a decade of trying, and they're moving toward a single commissioner in Allen County. That was special legislation only for Allen County because they tried to do it as legislation that would affect the whole state, where either everybody would move to one or you'd get the opportunity for a referendum. But the legislators defeated that. They wouldn't do that. So it's specialized only to Allen County. As a commissioner, a former commissioner, when I was there, and I had a great team. Suzanne Crouch was my president while I was there. I became president after she left. And Bill Nix, I mean, what a terrific team. But still it worked well only when 2 people didn't do anything, because there's room for one set of visions and for the other 2 people, if they happen to be there, to work on that vision. You can't have 3 separate visions and actually get anything done besides fighting with one another. You really need one vision. So the question becomes, what's the best way to achieve that? And then here in Vanderburgh County, you have the fairly unique situation in the state of Indiana, where you have the city of Evansville being the elephant in the room. And they have 120,000 now, and I think we're up to some 40,000 in the county. So you have 3 commissioners over here representing the entire county, but mostly representing 40,000 people. You have the mayor of Evansville representing 120,000. So what happens is that everybody thinks the mayor's in charge of everything. That's not factually correct, and it leads to a lot of taxation without representation. The mayor's making policy. The commissioners can either fight it or get on board, and I'll tell you, you get on board, there's not really a lot of room there for fighting. And so decisions are made that affect the entire county without really any input from the voters in the county. And I think that the consolidation vote is where they certainly expressed their opinion, and they killed consolidation, saying that they don't want a single elected leader for the entire county. They still want a voice. I think they still want an effective voice, but the 3 commissioners that we have now and the single mayor, that's not very effective. I think you need to have 1 county commissioner and 1 mayor.
One of the most important jobs that any elected official does is to really educate the people about where you are, where you need to go, and how you get there. Mm-hmm. And it seems like if you had one single voice, that person would be able to speak and really get the voters motivated. But whereas right now with 3 people, it's just so diffuse.
Right. You never know who's in charge. It's sort of like that game where you have those shells and you're mixing things around. Yeah, you don't really know.
You know, consolidation is clearly dead. I mean, neither one of the political parties want to bring it up. It just absolutely was trounced in the polls. It's beat both in the city and the county. So it's clearly gone. Yes. But where do we go from here? Because as you start driving north on Highway 41, you cross a magic line that you go from the city to the county. But it's really not obvious to anybody when you're driving. I mean, it's the same buildings on one side of the line as the other. You've got factories, you've got North High School and all the rest of it. How is the county going to grow and really coordinate the activities of where the people live in the county and where they live in the city, and they work both places, they go to school both places?
Well, either you have the mayor leading and the commissioners following, which is essentially the situation you see today, or you have commissioners who are stepping forward with a unified vision, whether there's 1 or 3 of them doing that. Or you continue to consolidate let's call it the back office, all the departments and so forth, and there are still a few more departments. The Unification Committee came out with a list of cost savings that we could have if only we voted for consolidation. When I looked at that list, I saw 1 or 2 things which could only be done in consolidation, but a whole lot of things that could be done right now with our current system of government, I think that we should pursue some of those cost savings. No diminution, no lessening of representation, but some more cost savings. So I think they could do that. But I also think that the people in the county want a different style of government. They really don't want a lot of top-down, and they want fewer regulations. In fact, as a resident of the city, I'd like fewer regulations too. So I'm all for that as a city resident. It's not a unique desire of county residents. But they moved to the county for a reason, and we ought to preserve as much as possible of that type of lifestyle, because it's very attractive to a lot of people. Since 1960, Vanderburgh County's population as a whole has stayed steady only because the people who left the city of Evansville, and I once calculated that they left the city of Evansville at a rate of 3 people a day, they mostly moved to the county. I don't think we should do anything to endanger or change the attractiveness of the county. I don't think we should mess with the political system in order and change that.
There's some regulations you said you'd like to get rid of in the county and the city. Could you give some examples?
Well, I'm very enthusiastic about the City Council coming forward with the new ordinance to eliminate the parking requirements for the older parts of the city. I think that's an example of regulation that the time for that came and went. Maybe we should have done that a long time ago. That's regulation. In the downtown business district, in order to put a table and chairs on the sidewalk, you have to deal with this manual, huge, thick manual, all these regulations. You have to have somebody come and observe your table and chairs and see whether it fits the style that they're looking for. And it takes weeks and weeks and weeks, and it costs money. We could get rid of some of those regulations. I sit on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and this one outfit wanted to put up a sign in a development at 64 and 41, up there on our side of that border. And he had to file for a permit and had to go through the weeks-long, come to a public hearing, weeks-long process, appear on camera asking for this. And he said, listen guys, if I wanted to put the same sign up over in Gibson County, I would just go to the sign company, buy the sign, and install it. It's ridiculous the amount of regulations that you put on in Vanderburgh County. So it's simple things like that. You know, why we have a parking requirement for buildings that were built sharing a common wall right next to each other, and the only way to meet the parking requirement would be to tear down the buildings next to it. That's absurd. So it's things like that. What else can we do? Because Evansville as a city and Vanderburgh County as a whole county, our population has been static since 1960. The rest of the state has been growing. We can't keep doing things the same way. We have to start doing something different, whether that's looking at incentives differently or regulations differently. Now, I've given you a map of incentives, and maybe this is a time to talk about that.
Sure.
The New York Times did a great article where they compiled all the local incentives given to businesses all across the country. And it's for a pretty long period of time. I think 10, 15 years, it's a long period of time. And one night, I just sat there with the computer and I keyed in all the ones for Indiana, and I created this map of them. Well, the map shows very clearly all the little balloons all around the state where the locals gave a property tax relief. Indiana has a lot of balloons, but our southwestern Indiana has almost none. Around Indianapolis, it's one balloon after another. Up around Fort Wayne, a city that's not that different in size from Evansville, but that whole region up there, all the way to the Michigan border, lots and lots of balloons, where those communities have stepped forward and said, if you come here, when you come here, we're going to give you a property tax break for locating your plant here. When you look at that, it's an indicator of business activity and of where companies are actually locating. The activity in southwestern Indiana is very sparse, and the numbers for the incentives given by Evansville are very low in comparison with those other communities.
Yeah, it's astounding. If you look at that map, the southwestern, Indiana, comparing it to northeastern Indiana, it's just totally different. Northeastern's practically covered by your indicators. The southwestern, I mean, it's just almost none, 4 or 5, and the same number of square miles.
So, you know, my question is it cultural? Have we bought into some theory that giving some business a property tax break is corporate welfare and something that we should avoid at all costs because we wouldn't want to do that, and we've sacrificed our ability to grow economically and grow in population, and we've given that away to the rest of the state. So we need to do something different, even if it's doing something different with the same old tools that we've had all along, but something different. If we don't change our ways, this static growth for the entire population since 1960, it's nothing new. It's a trend that we've observed for a long time. But what's worse is that people are leaving the city of Evansville and moving out of it and leaving the burden of the debt that we've accumulated over time, the debt that we've just now accumulated, $75 million, if my math is any good, for the hotel and the med school. And those are just the projects we're reading about. Well, anyway, that debt is being borne by fewer and fewer people all the time. We can't go on like this. Something has to change.
When John Friend was on this show some time back, he talked that if you look at our ratio of debt divided into population, we're getting toward Detroit-type numbers.
That's not a pretty picture, is it?
I mean, is that accurate, what he said, or is it?
Well, I haven't seen his figures, and I'd like to, but my sense is that he's correct. The piling on of additional debt, the decreasing number of people, how can it be anything different? Are these projects, are they going to bring more population here? Well, I'll just say, well, I hope so. I really, really hope so. But I had the same hope when Old National built its beautiful headquarters downtown. My hopes were increased when Vectren built that exceptional building downtown. And of course, before they did either of those things, when the riverboat came to town, the Yes Committee assured us that this was going to bring our community new life and new direction. And I'm still waiting. And so I'm hopeful, still hopeful. But the population figures speak for themselves.
Well, the tax incentives you were talking about, that's abatement of property taxes principally.
Principally.
Okay, what other incentives do you think we should have for businesses?
I think we should do whatever it takes. The legislature recently gave us the opportunity to abate taxes for up to 25 years. And if I remember correctly, it's speaking mostly to personal property taxes. Why don't we do that? We're not getting the taxes now. If that would entice a company to come here, a big manufacturer, and we still need to replace Whirlpool, I think we're all keenly aware that those jobs left and that money is no longer circulating in our community. If that's what it takes to bring the next big wave, and we need a wave, it's not just one or two, we need a wave, then we should do it. We should be different than the rest of the state. We have to market ourselves differently. And from what I can see, we're marketing ourselves about the same. Same isn't going to cut it.
Between the Ford Center, the med school, and the hotel, we're going to spend somewhere around $200 million downtown, in rough numbers. If some really neat opportunity came along, something really, really great that we all agreed we ought to try to land, is there money out there to land it?
I heard a presentation from the controller of the city of Evansville just a few days ago.
Russ Lloyd.
Yep, and he was indicating that there wasn't any room in the budget. In fact, he was indicating that the payments for the med school center were going to have to be put off for a few years. In other words, we're going to borrow the money now, but we're going to wait several years to make the first payment. Now, the money that should be paid is just going to be rolled into the loan, and we'll make payments on that, plus the interest over a longer period of time. So when he was painting that picture for me, it was the clearest indicator yet that there isn't enough money to pay for the projects that we have on the books now. And I think they're great projects, and I really have every hope that they are going to return the benefits that have been promised, because we really need them. But when we're capitalizing the payments and the interest, that's a big red flag. I'd encourage John Friend to take it the next step and to actually do a study and issue a report on that. I think we all deserve to know that.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people were excited about the med school, but I'm not sure there's other cities that had to pay to have a med school or other major university located downtown. Did we overpay for the med school?
Well, as far as I know, no other community has had to pay to entice a state university to actually build the building in their community. From what I understand, and I encourage somebody to come forward with the example that proves me wrong, because I'd like to be wrong on this point. From what I understand, the state used to pay, or paid for all of them. They would pay for 100% of the cost. So you could look at it, the med school, which I think is wonderful that it's coming to the community, but it was coming to our community anyway. The question was where it was going to be located. It looks like we agreed to pay $57 million when we could have paid nothing.
If we look at our community as the tri-state area, that med school was either going to go on the east side, Warwick County, USI, or downtown.
Right.
And I guess my question, and of course, I work downtown, own property downtown, so I'm a big fan of downtown, but was it worth paying that much money to really shift it from one part of our community to another? Well,
that remains to be seen. We've been told that the economic benefits of it, moving downtown, are spectacular. I hope that's true. But I've also been told that USI did a study, and I haven't seen the study, and I encourage you to get this. Isn't that what the City County Observer is
okay.
for? Yeah. That USI did a study, and it shows that there is no economic benefit to putting it downtown. Now, they were one of the contestants in the site location, so perhaps they have, the study says what they wanted it to say. But these facts should be brought to the table. The legislature hasn't met yet to approve the school. I hope they approve it for downtown. What I hope that they also do is agree to pay for it, just like they've done with all the other schools around the country, state, excuse me.
The downtown years ago had a master plan. Obviously, with the med school, the Ford Center, the hotel, and all the rest of that, the old master plan is obsolete. Would it help if we had a new master plan?
I think it would be help if we had something on the back of an envelope. I really do. I think the sooner we can get together a new master plan, the better. And the sooner we can have some consensus that we're going to work on the same master plan going forward for a number of years would be great. I listened to Warwick County's presentation for the med school. They have a master plan for what they're calling the medical mile, just on the other side of I-164, which we now call I-69, where they have the Deaconess Gateway and the New St. Mary's. But they have a master plan for that whole area that they have been steadily working on. We need to have the same thing for downtown.
Cheryl, I've really enjoyed you being here. I can't believe the half hour is almost gone. What are you going to do in the future? I mean, I've only got about another 20 seconds, and a lot of people are asking me, ask her what she's going to do in the future. What are you going to do?
Well, I hope to return to elected office, and I'm considering the possibilities there. And I invite people to let me know which office they think I should run for. I'd invite serious consideration of that. And not just somebody who said, oh, I'd sure love to see her in the fighting ring with so-and-so, because I'm a very serious person.
Well, I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you, Mike.
Hope you join us next week. We're going to have the House Minority Leader, Scott Peloff. Thank you very much. I'll see you then.
This year in the Tri-State, 1 out of 8 people will be in an accident.
Would you know what to do?
Pain and suffering, lost time if you're working.
When you call Woods & Woods, you are not a statistic. You are our client, and we will fight to get the money you deserve.
If you're in an accident, call Woods & Woods if you want justice.
If you've been injured, call 1-800-544-2108.
Let Woods & Woods work for you. You don't owe us a dime unless we win your case.
You're watching memorable entertainment television. MeTV TriState.